Mode.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining our School on Wheels workshop today on making math fun. My name is Amanda Carr and I'm the trainer at School on Wheels, and I have with me Anita Weir, one of our tutors who will be hosting the workshop today. Just a few notes before we get started. For purposes of sound quality, all participants are currently muted. You have the ability to ask a question at any time using the question pane, so simply type in the question and press send. We'll choose the order of the questions and read them out loud. You may also wish to use headphones for better sound quality. So a little bit about our presenter today. Anita started college as a math major before eventually earning a degree in business administration from the University of Phoenix. She recently retired from her third career as an executive assistant. In previous careers, she worked as an insurance claims examiner and employee benefits specialist. She has been tutoring at School on Wheels since 2012, so 3 years. Great. She lives with her family in Playa del Rey. Thank you so much, Anita, for sharing your expertise and your thoughts on making math fun with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Amanda. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your day for this workshop, and I hope you find it worthwhile. First we're going to, I'm going to give you an outline of what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about the challenges in tutoring math. We're going to talk about math phobia, also called math anxiety. We're going to talk about how math is unique among subjects that you tutor, and why your approach must be tailored to each individual child. Then we're going to talk about the opportunities, how to make math fun, how to use assessments to identify the math break, and we'll talk about what the math break is. We'll define that. We'll talk about limiting the assistance you provide with the students' homework and classwork. And then we're going to identify the fun factor. We're going to identify the fun factor. There's an appendix which I've provided, and we'll talk about what that is, what's in the appendix. And finally, we're going to open it up to your questions. So let's get started. First, the challenges. Math phobia. And when we talk about math phobia, I want to talk about yours, not the students. Math phobia is a real condition. Entire books have been written about it. And when we talk about math phobia, I'm more concerned about your math phobia, not the students. The students may have math phobia, but right now I want to address yours. It's a real medical condition. There are ways to cope with it, but I'm not a therapist, and that's not why we're here today. It's important that you avoid transferring your math phobia to your student. Take a positive approach to every tutoring session. For example, don't say things like, "I hated math too. Math is so complicated." Or my particular favorite, "Boys are better at math than girls." You can say things like, "Math is fun." You don't need to lie. You can say, "We get to work on math today," or "Let's do some math activities." Remember, these kids have enough negativity in their lives. You want the hour that you spend with your student to be a fun, positive experience. Your use of positive language will set the tone for the session. Now I want to talk about how math is unique. Math is unique among the subjects that you tutor. All subjects have prerequisites, as you know. For example, in American history, you always should study the Revolutionary War before you study the Civil War. But you could study the Civil War independently and still understand it. And you could say the same thing for almost any subject. Again, all subjects have prerequisites. But in math, the prerequisites are building blocks. Here's an example. What if you learn to subtract before you learn to add? Look at this subtraction problem. 192 subtract 48 gives a balance of 144. How would you check your work? You have to be able to add the remainder, 144, to the subtrahend, that's what it's called, that number, 48, to make sure you get the 192. I hope you're following what I'm saying. There's no way that you could do this subtraction problem unless you learn to add first. This is what I'm calling math building blocks. You'll see that we started at the bottom with addition and subtraction, and then the next block is multiplication and division. There's no way that you could learn multiplication and division without first learning addition and subtraction. And then we go on to square roots and algebra, and again, you could not have learned those without first learning multiplication and division, and on to geometry, trigonometry, calculus, and so on. These are just some of the courses you take. You can see this doesn't cover everything. Somewhere in here, you're also learning fractions, decimals, percentages, how to tell time, and so on. Many of these are building on earlier concepts. We'll be coming back to this slide. This is just an illustration. Now we're going to talk about the math break. The math break occurs when students fail to learn a concept along the way, but manage to fake it. Students are smart and resourceful. Homeless students especially have developed coping skills in all areas of their lives. They're experts at faking it. The result is that a student passes each class without a full understanding of the math concepts he was supposed to learn. I'm going to go back to the building blocks slide. So you see, if they can go, they might learn addition and subtraction, and maybe they didn't learn multiplication or didn't learn division, and they go on to algebra. It's possible that they faked their way through multiplication and division, get onto algebra, but then have trouble with algebra because they didn't quite get the concept of multiplication and division. Their lifestyle, homeless students' lifestyle, makes it less likely than other students that they'll catch up because they're moving frequently and so on. Don't blame teachers. They do their best, but they have to rely on testing to keep up with 24 kids in various subjects. And anybody who's in education knows about how students are passed on when they don't really learn concepts, and that applies not only to math, but in all subjects. A student in math can fake it for months or years, but eventually he won't be able to succeed in math class. This doesn't only hold her back in advanced math classes, but it can keep her from succeeding in math-based classes such as chemistry and physics and other sciences. I want to give you a typical real-world example. Here's a beginning algebra problem. I'm going to call this beginning algebra problem number 1. Solve for x in this problem, 2x equals 6. For those of you who haven't seen an algebra problem in a while, I'm going to give you a few minutes. Okay? So, do you have the answer? Okay. Solve for x, and where 2x equals 6 means that when you multiply 2 times x, you get the value 6. So what do you multiply by 2 to get 6? The answer, of course, is 3. Did everybody get that? Good, I'm sure you did. Okay? Now let's go on. Here's beginning algebra problem number 2. Solve for x. 7x is 56. I'm going to give you a few minutes again. If your answer is x was 8, you're correct. Now, did you think algebra problem number 2 was more difficult than algebra problem number 1? Actually, they were the same level of difficulty. Let's go back. I want to go back and look at them. Here's algebra problem number 1. 2x equals 6, and the answer was x is 3. Here's algebra problem number 2. 7x equals 56. They're actually the exact same algebra problem. The difference was not in the level of algebra, but in the level of multiplication. A student or a tutor who finds problem number 2 more difficult needs help not with algebra, but with multiplication, possibly with learning multiplication tables. The student is in algebra class, but it's possible she never learned multiplication tables. And I'm going to go back and look at the building blocks again. I hope you don't feel like I'm pounding this into your head, but once again, if you'll look at the building blocks, you'll see that algebra is a level above multiplication. You can't really succeed in algebra until you have a thorough understanding of multiplication, and that includes learning multiplication tables. So I hope that you understand that. And unfortunately, there's no substitute for learning multiplication tables. If you want to succeed in math, you have to memorize them. But there are fun ways to memorize them. We'll get to that. Your approach must be tailored to each child. If a child is having a problem with math, there's a good chance it's a math break issue. You will need to adjust your approach to address the math break. There are no cookie cutter tutoring sessions, but you probably already know that. So now that we've addressed the challenges, let's find out how to make math fun. First of all, let's use the assessments to identify the math break. To find out, the first step is to find out where the math break is. So how do you do that? Let's use the assessments. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but this is the assessments page from the School on Wheels website. It's a little bit hard to see. It should be familiar to you anyway. If you've tutored a student, you should have conducted at least one assessment to determine his or her achievement. And if so, you probably went to this page to select and print out the assessment. What you may not know is that School on Wheels has a new summer program. You can access the new summer program through the website by clicking on Volunteer Resources. And the summer program is that last item on the bottom of the page. The new School on Wheels summer program has valuable resources for use during the summer. It has assessments by grade level for both math and language, and it will help math tutors identify concepts that need work. If you haven't looked at the new summer program, I strongly recommend that you do it. I have looked at the math assessments by grade level, and they are really, really good and precise. So this is going to help you a lot in identifying the concepts that your student needs work on. I want to caution you that even with the assessments, as much work as you do, you may not be able to put your finger on exactly where the student needs help. Just do your best and work as hard as you can. There may be more than one math break. Just do the best you can. And don't worry about it. Just start working on the fun. You want to be working on the math skills that are appropriate for the grade at which they should have learned the missing concepts. But if you're not sure, start low. Start at kindergarten. Start at first grade. Since you're going to be working on fun concepts, your student will probably not object if it's too easy. Now, your student might be bringing home homework that he or she wants help with, or classwork. They might need help studying for a test. Remember during your tutor training that you're never supposed to use a session or more than half of a session to work on homework or classwork. At least half of any session should be devoted to work that you bring, whether it's from the activities that School on Wheels provides or that you bring, but never work more than half of a session on homework that the student brings. When you do work on homework or classwork or studying for a test, remember that because you're likely to be working on building blocks that are the lower level, the homework is going to be building blocks above the fun work that you have brought. That's going to be a little bit awkward because you're going to be working on with the student in our earlier example, you're going to be working with the student's homework on algebra homework, while the fun work that you brought is multiplication tables. Just do the best you can to help them fake it, get through their tests, get through their homework, but spend the bulk of your time helping them learn the basic concepts and know that what you're doing is going to help them in the long run. And now for the fun. Are you ready for the fun? What is your student like? Magic? Videos? Food? Games? Magic. I have yet to meet a child that doesn't like magic. Walk into your next session and tell your student, I can read your mind using math. Think of a number between 10 and 100. Add this, multiply by that, and so on. And then you say, the number you were thinking of was 54. See, it's magic. Then you show him how to do it. And then you show him how that he can read his parents' mind and read his friend's mind. He will love it. I promise you, I've done this. Videos. Have you ever met a kid that didn't like videos? I have some in the appendix that you're going to love, including some from Khan Academy called Doodling in Math Class. All you have to do is sit and watch these with your student. I promise you, you're going to love them. What about games? Here's an opportunity for the student to beat the tutor at concentration or war or rock, paper, scissors using math. What about singing? You can turn anything into a song. I'm going to give you an example in a minute. If your student is too shy to reveal her fun factor, or if your relationship with your student is new, just try a few things and see how she reacts. I'm going to give you some examples. Let's again talk about the algebra student who needs to learn her multiplication tables. Again, multiplication tables is drudgery, but there's no way around it. So let's find fun ways to learn them. Suppose your student likes singing. Okay, here we go. 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 3 is always 6, and 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10, 2 times 6 is 12, 2 times 7 means 14, and 2 times 8, 16. Now, this is as far as I got. If you want to continue with the 2 times table, you can, but then you have to start with the 3 times table and so on. It can be very time-consuming, and yet you've already shown a willingness to devote plenty of time just by being a tutor and then by attending this workshop. So I know you're not afraid of spending a little bit of extra time to help your student. If you're more creative than I am, go ahead and put the times table to Katy Perry or channel your inner Beyonce. Or better yet, bust a rhyme. Your student will appreciate it and it'll help him learn. What if the fun factor is games instead of singing? Let's play concentration. If you don't know how to play concentration, the rules are in the appendix, but it's a matching game. You have 20 index cards. You and your student together write the multiplication on 10 of the cards. So on 10 of the cards, you write 3 times 5, 4 times 5, 5 times 5, and so on. And then on the other 10 cards, you write 15, 3 times 5 is 15, and then 4 times 5 is 20. So on the other 10 cards, you write the answers to 3 times 5 and 4 times 5 and 5 times 5. And then you put all the cards face down, and then one by one you pick up the cards, and if you pick up 3 times 5 and you pick up 15, then you have a match and you get to keep them, and so on. Whoever at the end, whoever has the most cards wins. You only do 20 at a time, so it'll take more than one session to do them. But again, it's a game. The student can beat the teacher, and I've done this. I've never found a student who doesn't like to play a game, and even when the teacher wins once in a while, the kid has fun. It's a game. This is a multiplication house. I found these multiplication houses online, and I have the URL in the appendix. It kind of reminds me of an advent calendar. This is the house of threes. It has windows. So you open the 9 window, and under the 9 is the answer to 3 times 9, which is 27, if you don't know. I'm not very artsy craftsy, but I bet some of you out there are, and maybe you can think of other original ways of either making this yourself or something similar, or you can download it. Their house of threes and the house of 12s and the house of 7s. There's also, this also actually came out of a book called Art Math or Math Art, and so there's also all kinds of creative ways to use math if you're into that kind of thing. So this is, again, another way to learn multiplication in a fun way. What if your fun factor is food? Here is a way to learn division. So you bring 12 cookies to the session, and also I've done this and the child just absolutely loved it. And by the way, anytime you use food, it's a good idea to check with the parent first to make sure it's okay to bring food, because the kid's going to end up eating the food at the end of the session. So you bring 12 cookies to the session and you tell the student that the two of you are going to split the cookies evenly. How many cookies do you each get? You tell him to write down the answer, and he needs to not only write down how many each of you get, in other words, divide 12 by 2, but he also has to explain how he got his answer. Then, ding dong, the doorbell rings. His mom's at the door. You pretend his mom's at the door. Uh-oh, we now have to divide the cookies 3 ways. He needs to show you how to divide the cookies 3 ways. How many are each of you going to get? Ding dong, his sister's at the door. Now you have to divide the cookies 4 ways, and he needs to show you how to divide the cookies 4 ways, and so on, and so on, and so on. And at the end, he gets to keep the cookies. That's how he learns division. It's just a fun thing for the two of you to do together. Remember word problems? Remember how everybody hated word problems? Well, sometimes you just have to do a word problem. There's no way to get around it. Here's an example of a word problem, and you may have seen one just like this. 2 trains leave stations 456 miles apart at the same time and travel toward each other. One train travels at 105 miles an hour while the other travels at 85 miles an hour. How long will it take for the 2 trains to meet? Well, let's rewrite it for a child who loves sports. Imagine Tom Brady and Eli Manning start running at opposite ends of a football field that's 456 miles apart at the same time and travel toward each other. Brady runs at 105 miles an hour while Manning travels at 85 miles an hour. How long will it take for the 2 quarterbacks to meet? Now, you still have to do the word problem. There's no way of getting around the word problem. But if you do it this way, you're going to come up with the same answer. It just makes it a little bit more palatable. I'm hoping that this just gave you some ideas. In the appendix, I have lots more fun ways that you could work with your student. And I hope that you can take some of the examples that I gave you and make examples of your own. And now I'm available for questions.
Okay, great. So thank you, Anita, for some great examples of fun things to do with students for math. We have a question from a tutor wondering about the math card game that you mentioned, the memory card game, whether that would be appropriate for like an 8th grade student, do you think?
Absolutely. I'm not sure why you're asking. I've used it. Do you think that it would be too, I'm not sure whether you're asking if you think it would be too young or too old, but I used it for a 4th grader, and I used it for an 18-year-old, and both appreciated it. I think that they like, it puts them on a level playing field, I think, with the tutor. Mm-hmm. Anybody likes being in competition. Okay. So, yeah, I think they liked it. And I've used it for math, and I've also used it for language, for example, for vocabulary.
Great, and I think it does go back to the idea of filling in the gaps. Sometimes, even if a student is in 8th grade, they do need those lower level activities, and doing something fun can maybe take some of the pressure off, take some of the anxiety out of it. So thank you. So we have another question from a tutor about how to use, have you thought at all about Common Core standards, and do you have any advice for maybe integrating Common Core into some activities like this?
Unfortunately, I'm not an expert on Common Core. I'm not a professional educator, and I can't answer that question. I wish I could.
Great, that's good. I think we're going to be doing a Common Core workshop to that tutor. This is for you. We should be doing another Common Core workshop, so we will be, addressing that. But in the meantime, if you have any other questions, you can actually ask us, and we can try to get you some resources. I'll follow up with you after the session. Thank you. Other questions? Okay. So we have a tutor whose student doesn't like to answer the question if the tutor asks to repeat it. What is the best way to deal with this? So a student, my understanding is that the student doesn't like the repetition of that? Okay. Do you have any thoughts on that? Yes. So if the student is just uncomfortable or maybe maybe just feels uncomfortable with being asked twice.
You may want to just completely switch activities. Mm-hmm. It might just be that whatever it is that you're doing is making the student uncomfortable. Just try something completely different, and also at a lower level. So if you're working on a second grade activity, go to a first grade or a kindergarten activity. If you're doing something sitting at a desk, maybe do something active. Just completely switch it around and then maybe go back to whatever you were doing.
Okay, great. So yeah, maybe distracting the student, making them kind of, switching gears. That's a great idea. Okay. All right, so yes, so the tutor wants to know if we're going to get a copy of the charts in the appendix. So yes, right.
You're going to get a copy of the whole presentation, right?
Great.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep, so we can put those up, and we'll put up the appendix once the presentation is posted. So all the tutors who have attended and all other tutors will be able to access those resources for sure. So I have another question. A student who has from a tutor whose student has a learning disability and has had difficulty with really basic things. And do you have any thoughts for what to do with the student who does have like a more difficulty learning?
Go back to basics. It could be that whatever it is that you think the student is having the difficulty with, that's not it. It's actually something more basic. If you think that the student is having trouble with multiplication, it's really they never got a good grasp of subtraction or addition, and they're not going to object if you go back to addition games. Remember, it's games, or videos or songs. And just have fun with it. Just have fun with it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, for sure. And I think, just emphasizing that it can be fun and going in with a positive attitude really helps students so they don't feel like they're at, a disadvantage, or I think especially students who have, been identified as having a learning disability, they can feel like they're not adequate. And you, as a tutor, your job is to really make them, believe in themselves that they can do this, and that, I think using some of those more fun strategies might help with that for sure.
Right, and don't forget positive reinforcement. Mm-hmm. Also, I want to emphasize that the activities, all of the examples that I gave, as well as what's in the appendix, these are the fun activities. These are not the only things that you should be using. All of the worksheets and activities that School on Wheels has given you also should be used. You can't do only the fun things.
Unfortunately. And that's interesting. I mean, you talked a little bit about the balance between homework and doing something a little bit more fun. What if you have a situation where a student, really just can't complete their homework, and you're going back and you're filling in the gaps, but in the meantime, I think a lot of tutors find themselves in a place where they're maybe doing too much assisting. They're pushing, they're kind of maybe answering for the student on some occasions or doing the math problem for them. And it can be really easy to do that. So do you have any tips for, for a student that's really struggling with homework? Because I think that that's really common with a lot of tutors who are tutoring in math.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, every situation is different, and I think it's always great if you have the opportunity to coordinate with the parent and the teacher and so on. I can give you my own personal philosophy, which is if you help them with the basics, which is not their homework, you're helping them in the long run. So helping them get through helping them finish 5th grade is not going to help them as much as helping them learn the multiplication tables. That's my own personal philosophy, which I'm not sure everybody would agree with.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Thank you. Do we have any other final questions? All right. Looks like that's all the questions. If you do have any further questions for Anita, you can feel free to email them to me, and she's going to also provide her email address.
It's on the first page of the presentation, my email address.
Oh, absolutely. Great. So thank you very much for joining us today. I know that, again, you've taken time out of your day to really benefit your student, and I hope you enjoyed the workshop. Thank you so much, Anita, for coming and sharing your thoughts and activities with us. I think